On country strategy and program evaluations, I mean, each MDB calls them differently, but overarching objective is pretty much the same. We've done perhaps the largest number of country strategy and program evaluations in the last 2 years than we have in the 30-year history of the IDEP, the Independent Development Evaluation at the African Development Bank. There are two things that strike us. One, the similarity of the findings. So in the end, we are saying, okay, we've done 15, 16 country strategy program evaluations over the last 2 years, and we find findings very similar. So is there much value added in going forward? And the second thing we find is the timelines. So in some countries where there have been, we always take a 10-year timeline to allow for multiple cycles of the program. And what we find is that this is now getting to be a problem because in many countries in Africa, the more recent periods in terms of the last 2 or 3 years have been the more emerging in terms of growth or even shifts that are happening in both the economy as well as in the social and political arena. How should we manage both of these? Because the board members are saying 10 years is too long, you guys shouldn't do this, and the same thing on the other side. So how do we manage both of these types of things?
I think, this is actually really interesting and very valuable because, what you're saying is that you have found systemic issues. With the evaluations keep on coming, churning up the same thing, then if I were in your situation, I would actually have a dialogue both with the board and with management and say, like, look, here's the pattern. And what is behind this? What are the systemic causes for seeing these repeats problems? If that's clear, then maybe management can actually move forward and start addressing some of those things. If the root causes are not clear, you might want to actually do a thematic evaluation to do a deep dive into, like, well, why are we keep seeing this type of stuff, right? And that's sort of like where a country level evaluation can be complemented with a more sort of systemic, strategic or thematic evaluation as well. In terms of time periods, one thing which we're looking at in some of our sector or thematic evaluations right now is to say, like, well, which time periods would be interesting to compare? So, for example, we're doing the next results and performance report, the RAP, on environmental sustainability. And we can't look at the entire portfolio for the last 10 years and try to flag what was the situation in terms of environmental sustainability. So the team is really thinking hard about which time periods do we want to compare to see whether the World Bank Group's portfolio has become greener or not, right? And so similarly, if you're looking at a particular country and you see at the moment this is the turmoil, this is the transformation that they're undergoing, what would be a reasonable other period of time to look at in order to draw some contrasting lessons that are helpful for the programming? So if a country has had, a difficult phase of economic downturn, but managed to sort of transform it at that time, and it's facing exactly that type of challenge right now, maybe these are the two phases you want to look at to see how did the African Development Bank deal with that, and what can we learn from that?
Do you see any merit in looking at, let's say, just one country strategy cycle of 3 years and complementing that with a deeper portfolio evaluation over a 10-year period? So let's not worry about the social and political agenda over the last so many decades, but just focus on the more recent ones, which perhaps would be more relevant going forward.
It could well be if it's really such a dramatic change. I mean, the country program evaluations I personally have been directly involved with showed that a lot of the issues are very long-term issues, and that trying to take a longer-term view sort of helps then say, like, well, this is where the country is really stuck, and where creative new solutions are needed, you know. But it really depends a little bit on the country situation. Whether to continue doing something like, you know, the number of evaluations you do going forward, for me the question is really what do you want to use the evaluations for? So for example, if you say it's an important part of the country program cycle of the African Development Bank, and then to time, you know, that these evaluations happen before the next country strategy and program is approved, could be valuable. I would still not try to do 100%. I would be sampling and saying, like, let's get sort of like a reasonable sample and not try to cover the entire continent.
Yeah, the 100% makes it not just resource intensive, but also the value addition of that may not be what one would expect. So if you're looking at value for money, I guess that becomes a huge issue.